The agency in charge of U.S. Immigration Services updating its mission statement and removing the phrase nation of immigrants. The director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services saying that the revised statement now emphasizes protecting American workers and safeguarding the homeland. I want to bring in outstanding political commentator Charles Blow and talk radio host John Fredericks, former co-chair of the Trump campaign in Virginia. Good evening, gentlemen. So, Charles, I'm going to start with you. This is the mission statement in the United States Customs and Immigration Service written in 2005, and here's how it reads. It says the USCIS secures America's promise as a nation of immigrants by providing accurate and useful information to our customers, granting immigration and citizenship benefits, promoting an awareness and understanding of citizenship, and ensuring the integrity of our immigration system. The agency's new mission statement reads now, today, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services administers the nation's lawful immigration system, safeguarding its integrity and promise by effectively and fairly adjudicating requests for immigration benefits while protecting Americans, securing the homeland, and honoring our values. What changed? Well, the phrase that described the agency as securing America's promise as a nation of immigrants has been eliminated. We're no longer a nation of immigrants?
Well, I mean, that phrase is actually both a statement of fact and philosophy, right? That this is how we viewed ourselves, and is also a historical fact. The population of indigenous people of North America is relatively small, and most of the people who are here now are descendants of people who came to this country some way or another, whether forcibly or not. And it's very interesting for me sitting here not too far from Ellis Island, where a large number of those people funnel through to come to this country, to not think of America as a country of immigrants. And I believe that it is, part of the erasure of truth and fact and history, a kind of a revisionist history of America that we are now undergoing, and that is a problematic thing, just as a fact.
Mm-hmm. So, John, L. Francis Cisna, who the agency director described the revision as a simple, straightforward statement that clearly defines the agency's role in our country's lawful immigration system and the commitment we have to the American people. He was appointed by the Trump administration. Does this change how the president feels in his stance on immigration?
No. I think what they're saying is we're a nation of Americans. And if you come to America, we would hope that all immigrants who come into this great country attempt to assimilate in to America like our ancestors did. And certainly my grandparents did. We came over and we were not able to speak Italian, which my parents did, or German, which my grandfather did. You had to speak English. And so I think what they're saying is, look, we're a nation of Americans, and the president, no doubt, has a very different vision for immigration in this country, which he's boldly laid out, which includes economics and other factors. And that's what he got elected on. So I don't think that this should be a surprise or a shocker, and I don't really think it represents any major change other than it's 2018.
But you just answered the question. You said no, but you answered the question. I said, does this reflect the president's hardline stance on immigration? You said no, it doesn't. But then you said, yeah, it reflects how the president. So,
I think it reflects a change in the status of where the country is in 2018, as opposed to where it was in 1818. I think that's really what the difference is. And I think this is really all to do about nothing. I don't think anybody that comes into this country legally doesn't want to be an American. That's why they're coming in, Don.
John, I got to say this. Listen, you're entitled to your opinion, but from your logic, then the Second Amendment no longer applies in the way that it applied when the Second Amendment was written.
Well, we're not changing the amendment, Don. He's changing the director changed the language, and I just gave you the explanation, which
You
we're
said
a
it
nation of
reflects where
Americans.
we are in 2018 and not 1818. And
Yeah, I
you could
think
say
I
the
think
same
it does,
thing about the Second
and
Amendment.
I don't think
the
that's
Second Amendment
I don't
doesn't
think that's a
reflect
bad
where
thing.
we are in 1818.
I don't know
It
how
should
you
reflect
what
where
the
we are in
Second Amendment, Don,
2018.
has to.
Well, I'm just saying, but
I don't
by
think the
that, by
Second
your
Amendment
logic,
has to do with this.
well, because that's by your logic. Everyone keeps saying the Second Amendment is sacred. Immigration in this country, we're a nation
Right.
of immigrants. Shouldn't that be just as sacred? So if we're going to be living in a time where that is more reflective of where we are in 2018 rather than 1818, there are a whole lot of other things that should be changed as well.
Well, again, we're a nation of Americans. That's really what's changed. The country is a lot older than it was in 1818 when these words were written. And I really think you're reacting to something that doesn't mean a lot of anything. The president is not restricting immigration. He's not saying he doesn't want people to come into the country. He's changing, or he would like to change, the way we do immigration and change it to a different system, which I happen to believe is the right way to go. We had the Prime Minister of Australia in today, Malcolm Turnbull. Australia does it the exact way the president does. And by the way, the Australian Prime Minister today said at the White House in the press briefing that he would like to model the economic prosperity for Australia right after Trump's economic prosperity and his tax cut plan.
Okay,
So
I got to get to the
there's
break, John. I got to get to a break.
Go ahead.
All right, we'll be right back. And we're back. We're in the middle of a conversation. Charles Blow's back. John Fredericks as well. Sorry I had to cut you guys off. We had to get the break in. So, Charles, did you want to respond to what John was saying?
Well, I thought it was fascinating when John was talking about the difference between 1818 and 2018, because there's a kind of cultural racial blind spot with a lot of white America that does not want to acknowledge what happened in around that time of 1818 and how we kind of flung the doors wide open to immigrants from Europe, for a very long time. And in 1818, my ancestors were still slaves brought here, not because they wanted to come and become Americans, but because they were brought in as slaves. And Native Americans, the only indigenous people to this country, were being removed from their lands that they rightfully owned through both kind of forcible removal and also through kind of these dubious pacts and treaties. And so now that we have, kind of an America that they like, now all of a sudden we want to slam the door shut and we want to say, no, that's not who we are. That's who we were when people who look like me were coming, not when it's with people who are brown or Asian or whatever. And that is a very hypocritical, insulting reversal of the ethos of America.
Mm-hmm. John?
Charles, it really has nothing to do with that, Charles. This isn't about race. This is about economics. This isn't about the color of somebody's skin or how they come in to the United States. It's about jobs. What the president simply said is, we've got a $20 trillion debt, and we're looking for people to come into the country that can support themselves economically. So what the president has said is, if we see a need economically for pipe fitters that happen to be in Nigeria, they're going to go to the top of the list because we need pipe fitters. If there's welders in the Haiti, and we have a economic need
Haiti's
for
one of the
welders,
countries he called a shithole.
they're going to get to the top of the list.
Let's go for that.
They're going to get to the top of the
Haiti's
list.
one of the countries he called a shithole.
But that's,
and number two,
I
this
mean,
is
that's
just a
why I'm
rambling
using
word
these
salad
examples.
of deflection, because you do not want to. We're not talking about whether or not who he wants to come in. We're talking about the removal of this particular phrase and whether or not that phrase ever stood for something in this country, and it did. And it should still stand for something in this country. You go to the Statue of Liberty and you read about what it means, and they're asking for us to send, our the dispossessed, poor, hungry,
right,
of Europe, which was mostly who was coming. And when that was happening, everybody was fine and dandy with it. This is who we were. This is what we wanted, right? And now all of a sudden, this is no longer who we are. We want to build $25 million walls for nothing. because we don't want to keep the brown people out. We want to make sure that people from Haiti, the place you just said may have plumbers,
We're almost out of time.
can't come to the U.S. We want to make sure that people from African countries cannot come to the U.S. And you try to tell me that that is not about race. You try to disconnect economics from the racial reality in this country, and that is a ridiculous position for you to hold,
But also-
and also not factual.
But also, you say that talking about the debt, the president added $1.5 trillion to the debt, and you're saying that he is wanting to change the immigration system because
He's trying to grow us out of the
Yeah.
debt, Don. He's
But he
trying
just
to
added
grow us out of the
$1.5 trillion
debt
to the debt.
through 5% economic expansion, which is
Yeah.
going to well pay for that. And you
I
look
gotta
at the
go, guys.
you look at the economic results of the tax cut now. You know, you guys can
Thank you,
rant
guys.
rave
I got to
all
go.
you want.
John, I hate to cut you off.
Economics
That's it for us tonight.
Bye,
Thank you.
John.
wins out. Thank
Good night.
you.
Joining me now, Van Jones, Paul Callan, Brian Lanza. Paul, first to you, legally speaking, Rick Gates just won himself a lighter sentence. No question about that. And Paul Manafort seems like he won himself a world of problems right now. This seems to really turn up the pressure on Manafort.
An enormous world of problems for Manafort. And for Gates, it's the story of the downside of having a friend in high places. I mean, his relationship with Manafort is what brought him down completely. You read the indictment, you read the agreement that he made with the special prosecutor. He wasn't making a lot of personal money on criminal activity. He's charged with assisting Manafort in moving $20 million into offshore accounts and not paying taxes on it. He's accused of lying in, of all things, his proffer session
2 weeks
with
ago.
prosecutors. Now that's kind of like going into a proffer session with a prosecutor and then picking the prosecutor's pocket on the way out. They really frown on that when you lie during the session that you're trying to convince them that you'd be a good witness for them. So he's facing a world of problems and financial destruction as well. Not only potentially 6 years in prison, but a $200,000 fine.
Plus legal fees.
Yes, plus legal fees, which are, of course, backbreaking. Father of four, tremendous pressure on him to turn on Manafort.
So, Van, look, the White House will say and has said in the past that these charges against Manafort and Gates, they don't relate to the campaign. They're not about the campaign. They're about things that happened with their Ukraine business years before they joined us.
No.
Plausible defense?
I mean, sure. I mean, but Mueller's not done. It's like what you have now is a situation where people who were as close to the Trump campaign as these people who, frankly, were the Trump campaign for a while, have these kinds of criminal activities going on, shady connections, and he's getting closer and closer to being able to make a case that, listen, Paul Manafort, if you have anything you'd like to say, sir, if you happen at any point to have noticed anything about this president and his possibly shady connections, this would be a great time to cough it up.
You're nodding no.
It's unbelievable
Go
because
ahead.
the whole point was Russia collusion, and that's what Mueller was brought to bear. He was supposed to investigate this Russia collusion, and now the Democrats are hoping for the slight chance that maybe, possibly, there's going to be another tie. Sort of this heat-seeking missile is going to find some target. He was tasked with a simple
not
thing.
quite
We
right
talked
on
about
that,
collusion. There's clearly no collusion. This indictments, they bring nothing regarding collusion. It's a tough decision for Gates to make. He made it for his family. You have to respect that decision. You can't lie to the FBI. You have to pay your taxes. You have to disclose these things. That's what you encourage people to do. He's going to make an example. Mueller's going to make an example to other people to do these exact same things. They should. In doing so, they're going to expedite this process, and we're going to get to the conclusion of this.
But
that 2 years later,
the
there's no Russia
the
collusion.
harshness of Mueller in going after Gates with this level of malevolence almost in these charges, it shows he's not done. And it also shows he is like a laser missile. And if he finds the slightest degree of illegality in the White House or on behalf of the president, he'll move in that direction because that's the way he operates.
Let me just say one more thing as well. The Republicans keep saying this was only about this narrow set of issues, et cetera. Read the actual mandate. The mandate says any criminal activity that we find is fair game. And so and that's the way that the special prosecutor works. And you guys loved it when Bill Clinton was under the hot seat. So this is the way that it works. And the reality is a good prosecutor.
How long is he going to extend this?
Well,
Is he just going to keep it open in hopes of one day finding something?
Well, Brian, I will say,
how long do we
in
extend
the last week alone, there were 13 indictments against 13 Russians and 3 companies.
Nothing to do with Russia collusion, I might add.
Those were everything to do with Russia meddling
Correct. No
in the
collusion.
U.S.
So let's be
Russia
clear. So there's
meddling
no
in the
collusion
Russia
between the Trump
meddling
campaign
in
and
the
the
U.S.
Russians.
election, which is what the
but you know what?
investigation
Russians
is
always
all
meddle.
about.
They always have been doing propaganda. When I first started.
So
voting
do you
in
wish
politics,
that those indictments didn't happen? Or do you
No,
think
I mean they
it's
should
unnecessary?
happen. I think it's a good thing that they happen.
Is it a good thing they came out?
It's a good thing that those indictments came out. Absolutely.
Is it a good thing that law
Because you know what it does?
breaking-
It shows that no Russia collusion took place.
Is it a good thing that law break? Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Is it
As
a
of
good
right
thing?
now, it
Is
shows
it a
it
good
doesn't
thing that
exist.
law? It hasn't shown anything yet. It
hasn't shown collusion, that's for sure.
They
We've
have
spent
not- no.
hours saying that collusion exists.
Is
We
it
have
a good?
Chiron saying that collusion
Is
exists.
it a good thing that law breaking, whether it be the lying to prosecutors, 2 weeks ago by Rick Gates, or a conspiracy to defraud the government, is it a good thing that these things are being turned up?
Yes, it is a good thing. They broke the law.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, all I want to point out is these the rush to exonerate. You don't like the Democrats rushing to incriminate, but you're equally irrational for rushing to exonerate.
I'm not irrational. I'm just saying, what's the coverage been if they've only focused on Russia collusion?
Well,
the coverage matters.
We're not covering this. This happened. It's not about what we're covering.
You're covering that collusion happened, and we've now known that Gates has been investigated since 2014. Carter Page has been 2014 under investigation from the FBI. Gage has been under review since 2013.
We haven't said that.
Things haven't shown any
We haven't said
connection
collusion happened. We have said that there's an investigation of it. We have reported that Donald Trump Jr. took a meeting at Trump Tower when promised dirt on Hillary Clinton from the Russians.
Can I just add one thing to bring it back to this Gates plea? This is a road that could lead back to Russia. Remember, Gates had a relationship with that lawyer, remember the Dutch lawyer who was indicted and made a deal earlier in the week, who was working for the Ukrainian government, particularly the Russian-supported president of the Ukrainian government. That's a road back in the direction of Russia. Now, Manafort was fired when that president was thrown out, and they started then shopping for other international clients. Were those clients Russian clients? Was Manafort's relationship with the Trump campaign used to communicate with those Russian friends that he was seeking business from? We don't know where the investigation is going, but it's pointing in that direction, and Mueller is relentless when he finds a direction to investigate in. So I think in fairness, until he raps, and he may rap and the president walks on this, but we can't say there's not going to be a Russian connection when this is a secret investigation.
Well, in this network, we constantly go by innuendo that there is Russia collusion.
Well, that may be you.
So I'm saying that there is a
We
significant
say there's an
storyline that says that no collusion is taking place.
We say there's
you have people who come on this network every day from newspapers saying, we heard from an anonymous source that the president's worried about this because of Russia collusion. That's what you guys are covering. I'm just saying, let the facts bear out where they are. We're comfortable with the facts.
We continue to cover an investigation which is ongoing into whether or not there was collusion.
Storyline, with the facts as they are.
Last quick, the fact is there's an investigation, Brian. I just look
and what happened today showed no Russia collusion, anything related to the Trump campaign.
It showed the deputy campaign chair broke
but it had
the
nothing
law.
to do with the campaign. These crimes took place before they joined the campaign.
That's actually not true. That's actually not true.
Well, with the exception of Gates lying.
No, and also the conspiracy to defraud the government, the tax evasion and whatnot happened actually during the campaign. Many of those crimes happened during the campaign.
These are 2012, 2013.
The relationship with Ukraine began back then, but they happened during the campaign. All right. Brian, Paul, Van, thank you all very, very much. All right, Fridays tend to mean breaking news, whether it's stuff dumped late at night by those who hope will miss it, or stuff reporters uncover, usually from those who never wanted it out at all. That's what this next story seems to be. New reporting from the Washington Post and CNN on continuing snags in Jared Kushner obtaining a full security clearance. Remember, today the president went out of his way to say the Chief of Staff John Kelly will have the final say on it, even as he praised his son-in-law to the skies and said he knew General Kelly would do the right thing. No pressure there. In any event, the Post is reporting that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, not really a Trump favorite, phoned White House counsel Don McGahn 2 weeks ago with a warning. There was significant information, according to the Post, requiring additional investigation, which would further delay Kushner's clearance. With us now, a legal, journalistic, and political panel that shines no matter what day of the week it is. Carrie Cordero, Josh Campbell, Van Jones, and Paris Denard. Carrie, first to you. What do you make of this warning from Rod Rosenstein to Don McGahn? How significant is that the fact this call was made at all?
Well, I think it might have been in reaction. I mean, one possibility is that it was in reaction to John Kelly's memo that went out exactly a week ago, which said that they were going to require and ask the FBI and the Justice Department to give estimates as to when they were going to be able to complete clearance adjudication for certain White House officials. So John Kelly issued this memo that said, I'm going to try to straighten out the security clearance problem. It's possible, I don't know, but it's possible that then that phone call from the Deputy Attorney General to the White House counsel, which is the appropriate channel of communication between those two entities, was the Deputy Attorney General reporting back and saying, look, with respect to this particular clearance, the Jared Kushner clearance, it's still held up. It's still not adjudicated. There still are issues in his background. And White House, if you want to know that, then now I'm telling you that. And now it's up to John Kelly to do something with that information.
Josh, as you look at this, how significant is it, the fact that Jared Kushner still can't get a clearance 13 months in? And does it smell to you like it's directly linked to the Mueller investigation?
Well, it could very well be the case. So much about the relationship between this White House and the FBI is unprecedented, including the fact that we may be in a situation where the FBI cannot complete its background investigation because the applicant for security clearance may be the subject of another investigation. If we recall, on Tuesday, our colleagues here at CNN had reported that Mueller is looking into Kushner's financial ties, asking some questions surrounding China. And so, again, it may be that weird situation where the FBI can't put a stamp on the investigation because there are these ongoing issues. I know the relationship between the FBI and the White House when it comes to investigations is usually a little bit more transparent on the counterterrorism side. And what I mean by that is that, you know, the FBI can provide names of subjects and the like when it comes to terrorism cases. They generally don't when it comes to other type of criminal activity, certainly not the counterintelligence investigation that may impact the White House. So awkward to say the least.
Paris, you know, should Jared Kushner be running the Middle East peace process? Should he be seeing the classified daily intelligence briefing every day? Should he be requesting, as we're told he is, more than anyone else in the White House, classified information and research if he can't get a permanent clearance?
I think that's, like the president said, up to the Chief of Staff, General Kelly. But I don't think that there's anything improper about what Jared is doing, given the portfolio that he has. If you're going to be leading the White House efforts on peace deals and a lot of things on the international front, there's some classified information that you're going to need. And I think the big problem that we have here is there's a lot of speculation and innuendo. He could be doing this, it might be this, it should be this, it could have been, the investigation might be connected to Russia. What we do know is that this happens on the regular. People go into the White House before, and they have background checks and they try to get their security clearances, and you work until that is done. When it's completed, it's complete. We do know that Jared did file, I think, 3 amendments to his reporting. So each time that a new amendment came, that required more investigation. When you are a successful business person with international connections, money tied up, especially going to different foreign entities, and it takes a while to get to the bottom of all of those possible entanglements when you're serving in government like he has never done before. So I just don't think that there's something that we should lead into this as saying that he is somehow unqualified or shouldn't be able to do the job that he's been asked to do on behalf of the American people.
It's the FBI and the Justice Department, though, saying he can't get a security. He can't get the permanent security clearance. And it seems like that matters. It seems like that should count for something.
Look, I think it's unusual and I think it's unsettling because we don't know why not. If it's a financial issue, if it's a criminal issue, if it's a substance abuse issue, some of these issues could be very, very serious and subject anybody to blackmail, questions of judgment. If it's just because he's still under investigation someplace else, that's less of a reason to be concerned. So Paris is right. We don't know exactly. Some of these reasons could be quite benign. Some of them could be, other than benign. And so from my point of view, I don't think we ought to normalize this. I agree. Yeah, I went in, mine wasn't done. It is normal for them to still be in process. But this is a very, very long time. This is a very high-ranking official. And so I do understand why people are concerned.
Let's play what the president said about this, because it's pretty interesting.
General Kelly respects Jared a lot, and General Kelly will make that call. I won't make that call. I will let General Kelly make that decision, and he's going to do what's right for the country, and I have no doubt he'll make the right decision.
All right, so was that really leaving it up to General Kelly, or was that leaning on General Kelly, Carrie?
Well, so General Kelly has a real decision to make, because in his recent memo, what he said is that he's going to clean up this process, but he also left room for him to make exceptions. And so the question is he going to have a new process and say that the White House is going to follow security clearance process, but he's going to make an exception, frankly, for the president's son-in-law because of their access and their relationship. And that's not the way that security clearances are supposed to take place. Remember, the process is supposed to evaluate someone's loyalty to the United States, their trustworthiness, foreign entanglements, financial entanglements that would affect their decision making and their ability to have trust in receiving classified information. Nobody has a right to classified information. Nobody's entitled to it. It is an access that one is granted if normally they meet the requirements to get that access.
Josh, do you think that Jared Kushner will be treated any differently by the FBI officers investigating this because he's the president's son-in-law?
I don't think so. I mean, the FBI's hallmark is its fairness, and I think the FBI rank and file, the background investigators will be fine, regardless of what this decision is here, because they don't make formal recommendations. I will say, though, that the larger intelligence community, on the other hand, to include the FBI national security apparatus, is going to be furious if it looks like there's a double standard, because at the end of the day, this is their information we're talking about. These are the people that we charge to go collect information, to sacrifice or risk themselves and the lives of other people to collect human source and signals intelligence. It's their information, and if it's not treated appropriately, they're the ones who are going to be angry.
So to that point, Paris, part of our reporting has been that it's going to be difficult for Jared Kushner to get the full clearance. It might not happen. If it does not happen, do you think it would be appropriate for him to stay in those jobs?
I think what the White House will end up doing, or I hope they will end up doing, is if he cannot get the full security clearance, that they will find a clearance level, because there's multiple clearance levels. Find a clearance level that is appropriate, that the FBI and everyone in the international community is okay with, the intelligence community is okay with him having, so he can continue to do the work that he needs to do, because he has the trust of the president, and that's something that is important.
Jen?
The problem there, if I can just say,
hang on one second.
What I would say is he does have some things in his portfolio that don't require that security clearance. He's doing innovation stuff. I like that he's doing stuff on prison reform, criminal justice. So he does have some stuff in his basket that he could do without the highest priority stuff. So, here's what I think people got to deal with. Jared Kushner is going to be in that building, and so doing something, and hopefully doing something good.
And not getting paid, as the president likes to say, or Ivanka, who's in Korea right now, not getting paid. Everyone, thank you very much. One quick programming note: you can catch a new episode of the Van Jones Show tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on CNN. Look at that smile. Van will be joined by Steph Curry. Next, troubling new developments in the Parkland tragedy. Breaking news, new reporting that not just one, but 4 deputies were outside the school where 17 people were murdered. We'll also be joined by one of the Stoneman Douglas students, one of those students now pushing for change. Breaking news tonight, troubling new questions at the very least about the immediate response to the Parkland shooting. That's on top of the Broward County deputy and school resource officer who did not rush into the building while 17 people were being murdered. Tonight, along with that, along with other reporting about missed signals and red flags and all the rest, along with 3 of the wounded still hospitalized, there is this. That deputy, who has since left his job, allegedly had company outside the school. The very latest now from our Randy Kay, who joins us from Parkland. Randy, you have new details about the sheriff's deputies, 3 additional ones that did not enter the school. What can you tell us?
Well, John, first I can tell you that we know at least the one armed Broward County Sheriff's Deputy, Scott Peterson, stayed outside that school, even though he knew there was an active shooter inside that school. The sheriff says that Deputy Peterson was outside for more than 4 minutes outside that school building. The shooting massacre took about 6 minutes in all. But also tonight, as you mentioned, we're learning 3 other Broward County Sheriff's deputies were also outside that school building. They had their handguns drawn, but they didn't go inside. They were hiding behind their cars. Now, it's important to note that we don't know if the school shooter was still inside at this time, but we do know that they never entered the building, those other deputies. This is coming to us from sources at the Coral Springs Police Department, and we should also point out that it was the Coral Springs deputies, John, who were first to go inside that building.
Randy, you also have some new reporting about the tip that the FBI received just the month before the shooting.
Yeah, this was a major red flag, John, that went nowhere. That tip came in on January 5th, which was just weeks before the shooting. CNN has reviewed the transcript of that tip call, and this tipster who called it in was very close to the Parkland shooter, apparently, warning the FBI that the teen was about to explode or close to exploding. The female tipster spoke of his social media posts, his enjoyment of guns, his violence in school, and she said to the FBI that she feared him, quote, getting into a school and just shooting the place up. Meanwhile, the FBI, as you know, has admitted that proper protocols were not followed when it came to this tip. Somehow it went nowhere, even though it was so close, John, to the date of this massacre.
And Florida Social Services also failed to act years ago on a pretty strong tip about this guy.
Absolutely. That was in 2016. The Department of Children and Families here in Florida went to the home of this suspect. They went to check out his home life. He and his girlfriend had just broken up. And what they saw there was also very disturbing. They found that he was cutting his arms. He had Nazi symbols and racist language on his backpack for school. He was planning to buy a gun. And still, despite all of that, they determined that he was a very low risk. So they figured that he lived with his mom, he was going to school, he was getting some help for his mental health issues. That's why he was a low risk. But meanwhile, months after that report that the DCF closed here in Florida is when he actually went out and bought this AR-15 style rifle, which police say he used in this shooting.
Randy Kay in Parkland, Florida. Randy, thanks so much for your reporting. Ever since the shooting, we've been watching these remarkable kids, the remarkable, hopeful sight of young people standing up, speaking out, demanding that elected officials listen and act to prevent the next tragedy. Stoneman Douglas Sr., Emma Gonzalez, among those leading that effort. And today, Florida's Governor Rick Scott broke with the NRA and proposed new regulations.
If a court involuntarily commits someone because they are a risk to themselves or others, they would be required to surrender all firearms and not regain their right to purchase or possess a firearm until a court hearing. We're also proposing a minimum 60-day period before individuals can ask a court to restore access to firearms. Also, we will require all individuals purchasing firearms to be 21 or older. Let me repeat. We will require all individuals purchasing firearms to be 21 or older.
This has been a long rallying cry for the Republican base. If the other side has their way, meaning the Democrats, you're going to lose your right to bear arms.
President Trump repeated this warning during his CPAC speech. Watch.
They will take away those massive tax cuts, and they will take away your Second Amendment. By the way, if you only had a choice of one, what would you rather have, the Second Amendment or the tax cuts? Go ahead. Second Amendment, tax cuts. Second Amendment. I'm going to leave it at the Second Amendment. I don't want to get into that battle, all right? We're going to say you want, Matt, we're going to say you want the Second Amendment the most.
But repealing the Second Amendment, part of the Bill of Rights laid out by the founders, is not easy. Here's a reminder. It takes support from 2/3 of the House and Senate, needs approval from 3/4 of the states, and we can add one more there, is not going to happen. Now, let's talk about the NRA. It wasn't always this way. The Supreme Court only clarified, rather, gun rights interpretation of the Second Amendment 10 years ago in the landmark D.C. Heller case. NRA once promoted gun safety laws. Now the NRA is seen as a power in politics, but that does not mean they're widely popular. This CBS poll shows 46% think that the NRA has too much influence on politics today. Let me bring in now Adam Winkler, a law professor at UCLA. He's the author of Gunfight, The Battle Over the Right to Bear Arms in America. Also joining us is CNN commentator Andre Bauer. Good morning to both of you.
Morning, Victor.
Andre, let me start here with a tweet from the president. It's actually a retweet after some questioned his commitment to a few of the pillars that he's calling for in response to what happened in Florida. He tweeted this morning, "I will be strongly pushing comprehensive background checks with an emphasis on mental health, raise age to 21, and end sale of bump stocks. Congress is in a mood to finally do something on this issue, I hope." I want you to listen to Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn on one element of that plan.
I think what we ought to focus on is things that will actually save lives. That's why I think the focus should be on the Fix NICS bill, which is the only bipartisan piece of legislation that can be signed into law. There's a lot of other ideas out there that people are proposing that I don't think will actually change any outcome. And so I prefer to focus on things that will actually save lives and will affect outcomes.
One of the elements he highlighted is raising the gun purchase age for all weapons to 21. Describe for us the fight the president has ahead with his own party if he's going to push these elements that he tweeted out this morning.
Victor, there's going to be a substantial debate on this, but I think debate is healthy, no matter where you come from on this. And there'll be some ideas that will be shot down, but both parties need to come together. Look, there's extremists on both sides of both parties, but to engage into debate will allow an opportunity for people to come with different ideas. You know, I don't believe in immediately nullifying someone's ideas. I think you engage, you listen, and then they'll hopefully find some common ground to reduce what has become just absolutely deplorable. All of us agree something's got to be done. What to be done is the big question, but I like to see folks from all different backgrounds come together and say, what about this? What about this? I served in the legislature in both bodies at one time as a young man. And I went into debate sometimes thinking one thing, but after careful consideration and a good plan laid out by different opposing views, sometimes they change my mind. And that's what's healthy most for the process.
All right, Adam, let me come to you. In your book, Gunfight, you write about the NRA meeting that changed everything because the group wasn't always what people see today.
That's right. The NRA was formed in the 1870s after the Civil War, and for most of its history, it supported reasonable gun control laws. In the 1920s and 30s, for instance, supporting laws restricting concealed carry of firearms, laws that today's NRA challenges in court as a violation of the Second Amendment. The NRA in 1977 had a revolt at the membership meeting where a group of hardliners took over and ousted the existing leadership that was favorable towards at least moderate gun control measures. And the NRA really devoted itself since 1977 to a hard-hitting political agenda of opposing any gun control laws.
So, Adam, Delta is the latest company out today that's announced that it's going to cut ties with the NRA, ending discounts, asking for their company information to be removed from the NRA website. Do you expect that will have any impact on the NRA, on the policies that they propose or support?
I'm not sure what impact it will have on the NRA. Wayne LaPierre's speech at CPAC the other day seemed to be more about digging in than about finding places to compromise. But I will say we are seeing just a wave of private businesses express their unhappiness with the NRA by cutting their ties. And it shows that even though nothing's happening through legislation right now, the private market is stepping up to really make a stand against the NRA.
Andre, I want you to listen to President Trump. This was April at the annual NRA meeting, April of 2017. Here's what he said.
You have a true friend and champion in the White House. No longer will federal agencies be coming after law-abiding gun owners. No longer will the government be trying to undermine your rights and your freedoms as Americans.
Andre, if a Democrat had proposed what the president is proposing now as it relates to background checks and bump stocks and the age to purchase a weapon, it would likely be received as federal agencies coming after law-abiding gun owners and undermining rights and freedom. So why are we hearing rejection of the policies but not the vitriol that has been reserved for Democratic lawmakers on these topics from the NRA?
think we all can appreciate that the political climate has changed substantially in the last few months with the loss of so much life and so much attention given to it that people want action. And so you're seeing the president, we've got a president that's a businessman, and he's not dug in the sand on every issue. I think he is evolving, saying, look, we've got to address a situation that has now come to our attention. And as a leader, I think that's a good quality. I don't always agree with the president, but I do appreciate that he is trying to make an effort to say, hey, we got a problem here. There were several different people at fault here, but what can we do to come together to throw some suggestions out there and find some solution to a problem?
Adam, to you, what we're not hearing, we heard from Wayne LaPierre saying that Chris Murphy and Leader Pelosi hate individual freedoms based on their call for stronger background checks and stricter gun controls and criticizing the NRA. We're not hearing anything about the president. Do you expect that they will stay pretty quiet about this president as he continues to push these policy changes?
Well, I think one of the real keys is what are the policy changes that the president's really going to propose. So he proposed a ban on bump stocks, but that was a deal that was reached 2 months ago in Congress when a piece of proposed legislation was shelved in favor of ATF reconsideration. So that's not a new policy change, and it's something that the NRA supported. Things like the Fix NICS bill, it's a very marginal fix that provides some additional incentives for states to help out the background check system. It's a good reform, but it's just not very meaningful. And so the devil's in the details. If the president really supports universal background checks, then that might get the NRA upset. But so far, the NRA has been one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters. And I tend to think that Donald Trump is not going to do anything that doesn't have the NRA support at the end of the day.
All right. Here on the screen, the number of people who support those universal background checks almost universally here. You've got 97% of respondents who support it, and the 3% here is in the margin of error. So it could essentially be everybody. Adam Winkler, Andre Bauer, thank you both.
Many blessings. Have a great weekend.
You too.